Welcome everyone, John Bodine here with Redemptive Psych. Welcome back to another video on our short personality series, an introduction to the 16 types. In this series, we're committed to providing the tools to begin to understand ourselves, others, and our creator better by studying all the aspects that make up the basic human profile. Today we're talking about one of the most well-known types within the personality community, that is the INFJ. The INFJ has a kind of ethereal and larger-than-life quality in the MBTI community. They are, a lot of the behaviors of some of the other types, specifically some of the intuitives, are grouped into the INFJ in terms of the perception of them, and a lot of them are just not accurate to what the INFJ's actual life and experience is about. And again, these letters, we use them to help identify what we're talking about. The letters themselves are not that valuable to me. I don't care about them much, but right here between the archetypes and the functions, I believe is where the main source material of a type is. The INFJ is one of the 4 idealist types, meaning they are future-oriented and committed to bringing about the good, committed to bringing about the ideal. Now, as opposed to the ENFP, who's helping guide other people towards their futures and helping people realize their goals, the INFJ views themselves more as the pursuit of the ideal. They are trying to become the ideal that they see that's possible. And of course, if they seek that perfection without grace, they will fall short and they will be very hard on themselves, and they maybe even will destroy themselves because they are constantly comparing themselves to the ideal. And if they can let that go a little bit, they can experience some actual freedom in their life for the first time. I've picked 3 words to describe the INFJ as I see them: searcher, selfless, and sensitive. The first one, searcher. Of all the types, INFJs are the most searching. They're always looking. They're like a beacon of a lighthouse, just like looking for something, looking for the future, looking for the path forward for themselves. They walk around in this, as long as that they're not pulled too much by distractions in their environment or their obligations, they walk around in this kind of dreamlike state, this daydreaming about their life, about images that they see, connections to be made, opportunities, or just a whole variety of images that they can't necessarily explain. They are walking daydreamers, and they're always searching for the perfect path, the right path, the thing to pursue. That's their state of being. Second, selfless. Now, selfless has a couple connotations. I mean it kind of literally. INFJs do not have a great sense of self. They don't really have a sense of self. They feel kind of like empty things floating in the ether. When they look in, they don't necessarily know what to look for. And often what they feel is negativity about themselves, where they really lack a sense of internal grace most of the time. So because of that selflessness, they don't really have a sense of self, they look for that in other people, and they often use other people to stabilize themselves, because whatever state someone is in around them, they can embody that state too. Their path in life, one of their paths, is to try and find their true self, their real self, that is actually underneath all these floating feelings and images that they experience on a day-to-day basis. And then third, sensitive. I mean this kind of literally. They are very aware of the little movements in the environment, the facial expressions of a person. They see all these kinds of things that they don't necessarily know what to do with it, but they see it. They see all these movements in the world around them. They feel very deeply of the experiences of the people around them. They are extremely empathetic, but it's a passive accumulation of other people's experiences. They are very sensitive to that. So searcher, selfless, sensitive, that is my understanding of the INFJ in very short. Moving on to the functions here, we have our tools, we have our archetypes, and the functions expressed through them. The INFJ's top function, their top tool, their go-to, their hero function is called introverted intuition. Introverted intuition is about the images and the paths and the opportunities that they see mostly for themselves. It's a orientation with their own future. Now, within that future, they see how connections or opportunities will be shared with other people, but they are kind of the source point in terms of the path or the project or the dream to pursue. They are in a state of that dreaminess, in a state of that pursuit. It's also a source of their desire. They are extremely desirous people. They can want something extremely strongly and then 5 minutes later want something else. In general, if they really want something though and have put some work into it, their desire can be a lot more stable over time, at least until that thing is accomplished. So it's a combination of this imaginary world within them and the desire to have that played out. They need the space and the opportunities and the options to just experiment with what they want and experiment with the paths and the freedom to choose. The worst thing that, one of the worst things that an INFJ can experience is the loss of freedom. It's sort of like a little candle that's flickering, and then you put the lid on it and all the oxygen is drained out and they have nowhere to go but to be extinguished. And that can make them, can send them down all kinds of destructive paths often. Next, their parent function. This is their source of responsibility. This is their source of kind of social service. This is extroverted feeling parent. The INFJ is very empathetic and compassionate to people around them. FE is quite literally an empathy function of what is that person feeling, but it's also a decision-making function of trying to be good, trying to fit into the group, trying to fit into the people around them. They are very good actually at fitting in, even though they feel like a stranger in a strange land much of the time. But they have a natural ability to just help other people. They often have a heart to help other people, especially people that other people or society has pushed down or view as less than. They, with their responsible empathy, spot the value that other people neglect or reject and try to invest into those places. Next is the child. This is our source of innocence, our source of naivety, but also our source of renewing energy. For the INFJ, this is TI child, introverted thinking child. They are very logical. They are very problem-solving oriented. They can determine and sense problems with their FE of, okay, that person's in pain, that person's suffering, that person something's off with them. So I'm going to use my child to help solve problems and help people. That's kind of their internal motivation. They can be extremely critical, even though they don't really notice that all the time, because they can nitpick all the problems in the world. That's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, and they can keep listing things. And they do well when they realize how nitpicky they can come across. But even though other people don't necessarily think of them as great thinkers or great problem solvers, they really do have an ability to fix things and solve things and provide ingenious solutions. They need a little bit of time and more context than some of the other types may need, but they do have a hidden ingeniousness to them. Now, there is something here about mistyping. Some INFJs will type as other things because FE is more about other people's feelings and not their own. So within their own internal state, they're actually more aware of their own thoughts and their own logic and their own kind of detached mind than they are of their own warmth or their own emotions. So even though they are their feeling function is higher, technically, they may identify more with a thinking type. Next is their inferior function. The inferior is a source of insecurity, anxiety, and vulnerability. For the INFJ, that is extroverted sensing inferior. It is an insecurity about the experience of people around them. They are insecure that they are making other people uncomfortable. They are insecure also that they cannot make a positive impact on the environment or on people around them. It's kind of like an anxiety about, I don't have what it takes to perform X task. Some INFJs are drawn to athletics, especially if they go to that at an early age, to prove to themselves that they have what it takes to perform in an environment where that's necessary. It's also an insecurity that people will not be stable for them. We talked about them needing stability to kind of develop their sense of self. They really fear that stability being dropped and being left by other people and not being able to rely on other people. They really need to be able to predict the behaviors of other people around them, and that helps stave off some of their anxiety and actually pursue the thing that they really want. So it's a deep insecurity about what they do, how that's going to impact others, and a large hesitance to actually express themselves around others. They have to be pretty comfortable, or other people have to be comfortable around them before they might express themselves. Next is their Nemesis function. The Nemesis pulls on the hero function. Think of it as it's the hero's shadow. For the INFJ, the Nemesis is extroverted intuition. This is a concern about other people's intentions, about other people's paths. They often see the worst way something can play out, and that is to combat their desire for freedom. I want freedom, but the Nemesis exists to constrain them. Yeah, you can have whatever you want, but if you drive recklessly, this is likely to happen. So the Nemesis exists to help put constraints on their freedom so they don't do a lot of damage. So they do walk around kind of worried, though, about what may happen. They can see all the potential of the way that bad things can happen around them. It also makes them a little paranoid at times about other people's intentions, because that's what NE is aware of. And they can be preoccupied with fear, even if that fear is an illusion. Next is the Critic. The Critic function is the source of our skepticism, our criticism. It's kind of like a grandpa or grandma who has been involved with bitterness and judges the world. That is its natural tendency. For the INFJ, that critic is internalized. It's introverted feeling critic. This is one of the sources of their attitude that they have sometimes, that nothing is good enough. FI critic judges, because TI child sees the flaws in everything, potentially, if they're looking for them. FI critic is very hard to please. And INFJs are very, very, very hard on themselves, because from their natural perspective, nothing is good enough. And they judge things as not good enough, as bad. They judge themselves as being worthless or useless because they can't do this thing or can't do that thing, whatever it may be. That is the internal state that they often have to battle against. Now, one of the things that they need to realize is, as much grace as they give to other people with helping them work through some of the difficult times and the emotions and the attentiveness that they give to other people, they often neglect themselves, and they judge themselves based on a different standard than the standard that they hold other people to. It's actually an internal hypocrisy almost, that the standard applies differently to them because they're looking for the ideal. They're searching to become the ideal. And maybe this search is actually a vanity. Maybe it's not something that you INFJs actually do well to seek, or maybe it can be done in a different way, not through the context of such judgment. Next is the Trickster. The Trickster is a source of confusion and some obliviousness, where we think we know something and we don't know it, and then we feel like we do and we don't. The Trickster for the INFJ is extroverted thinking. This is what other people think. This is external forms and procedures, like doing taxes. Very difficult, very confusing to the INFJ, because it doesn't necessarily make logical sense. It is someone else's thinking that appears arbitrary to them. Now, they have this issue in communication sometimes where they assume what someone else knows, because extroverted thinking is what someone else knows, their knowledge, their perspective, and they think that they need to teach that person because the INFJ knows the answer and that person definitely doesn't. And then they realize that that person might know way more than you do about it. And that can be embarrassing, and it's not a malicious intent, but it can get them in embarrassing situations. So learning to ask instead of just tell, that is the very simple way to avoid some of the perils of TE Trickster. But it's also a source of curiosity and wonder about not always being beholden to the standards of other people, and being able to explore things in a practical way for themselves. That is also a source of how they explore their freedom, even though they care a lot about the values of society around them. Lastly is the Demon. The Demon is one of our least aware functions. It's the one we push down the most. It's the one that also creates havoc and wreaks havoc and creates damage the more that we're unaware of it. The Demon for the INFJ is introverted sensing. Introverted sensing is all about endurance, my past, my memory, my internal body experience. They're not very aware of their body. They have to work really hard or go through some really hard things to become aware of their body. They also view their past in a kind of harsh and critical and bitter way. especially when they remember all the rough things that they have been through. They interpret the past not through the good things that have happened, but all the bad things that have happened. And the reason why, one of the reasons why, is because as they pursue their future, eventually they achieve that thing, and that thing becomes past. And when they look back on it, they see that that thing didn't measure up to the ideal. So they judge that past experience as being inferior or useless, when in reality they are just being way too hard on it. They also struggle with treating themselves really badly, and especially when they lose freedom, feeling like they're trapped, and they kind of panic and they just get into all sorts of bad habits to cope or to feel like they have to cope. So yes, SI demon can be a source of self-destruction for them, but as they start to learn from their past and stop judging the past as not measuring up to the ideal, the demon's a little freer and actually has some things to teach the other functions that will make the INFJ feel a little more free eventually. But in general, the INFJ is quite a mysterious type because, again, they exist in this dreamy state. They sort of float between things. They are not really constant. They're kind of moving around. But they are very good at pursuing something and being committed to something with their ideal. They want to become the ideal. They want to bring out the best versions of the people around them. And they can be they can inspire by example of being very determined and being compassionate to those around them. All right, guys, that's the INFJ. Thanks for stopping by. Again, the INFJ is one of the most prominent types in the MBTI community. I think they're kind of misunderstood because they're hard to understand, and because some of the attributes of other types are kind of linked in with them. So if you have anything to share about the INFJ, any stories or insights, please do so below. And until then, we'll see you in the next video. Bye.